Hello and welcome to Top of Mind with Ann and Rachel. My name is Rachel Prophet and I am a white woman with long red hair that's down today. I'm wearing my rose-colored glasses to help block all the blue light, and I'm wearing a brown shirt, and I'm in my office as usual with my epic sticker wall behind me. Ann, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Ann Krupke. I'm a senior fast track solution architect at Microsoft. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman with brown and purple hair, which is pulled back today. I'm wearing some over the ear headphones and a yellow sweatshirt that I embroidered myself for fun.
That's awesome. I didn't know that you could do embroidery too. And you have so many talents.
Pretty much anything I put my mind to. And I'm coming to you from my home office. That's true. That's true. So there, you don't have to just be tech. You can also be creative and make things. Rachel does too, right? You would.
It's true. I do a lot of woodworking in my free time. Mm-hmm. I've been doing a lot of woodworking lately since I've been out of work for so long. But we have such an exciting special guest today, everyone. We have Ian Jensen. Ian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Glad to. Yeah, I am Ian Jensen. I'm a principal business applications SME in the industry solutions engineering team at Microsoft. I'm a white male with a very, very bald head, glasses, brown beard, gray floral t-shirt. I'm sitting in an office with a bookshelf behind me, and I'm wearing earbuds, which I usually don't do, but
that's awesome.
Just for the show.
So Ian,
pronouns are he, him. Pronouns are he.
Oh, thanks. So Ian, I have to start by asking you, what exactly is industry solutions engineering? I mean, I work here and I'm not really clear about what it is. Yeah. So if you could maybe start by explaining that, yes. That would be great.
I would love to. I'm glad you asked. Even within Microsoft, we usually have to explain ourselves at the front of the conversation. So I actually recently asked our corporate taxonomy team to add us to the glossary to try and help with this. Their description, I'm going to read first, and then I'll tell you what I would actually say we do. So they say that we are a business unit focused on innovating with technology at speed to solve industry-specific business challenges, which I don't think I'd be stretching to say. That describes a lot of teams at Microsoft.
Isn't that Microsoft in general?
Yeah, if we're doing our jobs.
Microsoft.
So do you work at Microsoft or something, Ian?
Yeah. So the way I would describe us, we're mostly engineers. A good chunk of our work is engineers. There's a couple thousand of us.
So you write code.
Did you just say there's a couple thousand of you?
Yeah. This is the great. I shouldn't say secret, but the great. Unspoken word at Microsoft, I guess. We specialize in pretty much everything that Microsoft builds outside of maybe Xbox and Windows. Although I was going to mention, I am waiting to use my XNA skills that I learned in college. Any old school Xbox devs watching maybe will appreciate that. So we work across the product suite.
So not just Dynamics, like everything Microsoft offers, like Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365,
Azure,
everything except Xbox.
Yeah.
Do you do Surface stuff too in your team?
I'm not 100% on that. I haven't run into any Surface people. I'm sure we have people that have worked with those product groups. Okay. And that's what I was going to. So that's kind of the other part I was going to describe is that. We've got expertise across basically all the product suite. We engage large or otherwise strategic Microsoft customers. In my experience, and this is the part where I'll say this is Ian's kind of description. What we most often do is build kind of bleeding edge solutions on top of the product suite, and then work with the product groups to either incorporate those features directly or make sure that there is a roadmap to address the customer need that we engage with the customer to address. So it's a very fun. Go ahead.
How does a customer land in your program then? Like, how would they know, or do you go after customers?
It's a little bit of both. There's this thing we have called the IS front door that is like the initial triage point, and I can maybe dig up a link while we're talking to add to the talk here. But that's the front end for customers that.
That's so genius.
Yeah. Yeah. It's better than like, I know a person, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know someone who knows
Just go
someone.
knock on the front door, ring the doorbell, see if anyone's home.
well,
Also,
I was going to
I
say
want to
that,
share a little tip for you, Ian. You don't need to
Yeah.
contact someone to get this thing added to the glossary. We have this really cool thing called Viva Topics. Have you heard of Viva Topics?
I've seen it floating around. I haven't
You
interacted with
can
it.
go out there and make your own Viva topic. Viva topics are actually awesome. And the cool thing about it is, like, when you make a Viva topic, if you do a browser search for that word, or you're on any SharePoint page in all of Microsoft, that word will become underlined and a hyperlink to your Viva topic page.
Okay.
It's super cool. I set one up for Tech Talks, and I set one up for our business process guidance. So that way you can go find stuff. Like Viva Topics, it's an awesome feature. If you're not familiar with it, it's part of the Office 365 suite. I'm pretty sure is how you get Viva. Like Viva is like this like new like word that we're using for a lot of stuff. Like navigating Microsoft is really complicated, but Viva Topics, super awesome. Your IT team would probably have to do some setup to expose it and get it configured in your organization, but we have it internally here, and it works across all SharePoint pages.
That's cool.
You can also, when you're in an email, if you do a £sign or a hashtag and then you type the topic, it will find the related Viva topic. So you can embed it in an email, a Teams chat. Yeah. So it's a super accessible way. I've actually built out Viva topics for particular supply chain features that I work with people in. So like putting the PM in, and like the contacts for people who know stuff, and like presentations we built. So because Microsoft is one of the largest companies in the world, and we can be really siloed, and you'll see people kind of recreate the same content or redevelop the same tools a lot. So having a place where you can tag everything and other people can edit the document and publish it. And I actually think it uses artificial intelligence to propose that you might be a contributor or owner of certain topics just based on work that you've done.
We should definitely get into
this section was going to just like morph into like a Viva Topics how-to.
I mean, hey, like
that's the magic of top of mind.
Exactly.
It's like
there's no agenda.
You said something, and I was like, I might have a solution for you. Check it out.
So anyway, you were saying that the IS team, you've got a front desk, so sometimes front door. So sometimes people come to you, but sometimes you go after people in terms of like customers that you work with to help build them solutions.
Yeah, and I guess so. To delve a little bit more into that, so I mentioned that all the customers we work with are just the largest Microsoft customers. Some of that is that they generally have engineering teams that we can co-engineer solutions with. The other pattern that kind of my biz apps team gets more into is like we see a common thread across several customers, and then we're looking for like who is the kind of canonical match of the pattern that we're trying to address with the solution. And so those are kind of the two things from like a triage perspective that we look at. I was going to mention also CSAMs which I don't remember, maybe one of you knows what that stands for, but it's like
customer
your account
success
person.
Account manager, something like that.
Yeah, I should look it up in the glossary, or perhaps a Viva topic. But they also can kind of interface with us. So but I like to. Sorry, go ahead.
When you talk about like building tools for customers, building features, especially within biz apps, right? Are you saying that you'll develop like a feature that ends up in the standard product, or you'll build code that they install in their database, or is it like a Power Platform solution? Like what does it mean when you talk about you build solutions for specific customers?
Yeah, sure. I think the key part of it is the co-engineering aspect. Because of the way we engage, we all but require that there's kind of skin in the game from the customer side.
Okay.
And as far as what we build, it's really across the board. So like I, as Rachel well knows, have a pretty extensive background in ERP, but the team actually works across the biz app suite. So The rest of my team are historically CRM folks, Power Platform, data people. So we've got a pretty motley crew to address most of the biz apps problems that are facing our customers today. What was I going to mention? Oh, the other part of what we build, I mentioned matching patterns. We are very public about kind of the end result solutions wherever we can be. So we open source a lot of our code.
Where?
We've got solutions out on.
So like the stuff that you build, you open source, but where? Like where can someone go find these cool solutions that you're building? Do you have a link for that?
This is good. I will describe a thing that I'm not supposed to link yet and encourage people to reach out because it's in public release, but quiet public release. There is a playbook. I think we're calling it the Microsoft playbook. That's kind of like the central repository of these customer vetted solutions. I say repository. It's like markdowns. It's like Microsoft Docs, but it has links out to the actual code backed solutions that we've produced, and that will be more loudly public. I think in the next couple months here. But if anybody's curious, I know I think this is live casting in a couple different places. You can reach out to really any of us, and we can.
We need to get this added to the guidance hub. This is so cool.
When Ann announced this at DynamicsCon, and I reached out pretty much immediately and said we're doing something similar. We should figure out how to kind of connect these so that customers have as much information as they can about what solutions.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah. So there was, I think you shared another link with me earlier. This one we are allowed to share now.
This one, yes, I made this link. I would love to. So this kind of came
is like a
out
GitHub repo where all your stuff is at.
This link. So what this is, there's a whole backstory. So, and this is I appreciate you two humoring me on talking about this. It's very kind of niche. So there has been historically a statement that has been floating around the partner channel, Microsoft, everywhere that Git is not supported for X++ code management for D365 finance implementations. I spent
and you want to debunk that myth right now, right here, live on top of mind with Anna. I do.
Yeah, hot take from Ian. It's like there's some big asterisks here, but so what I learned through a months and months and months long journey is that when we as Microsoft say support, it is a very overloaded term, and so what I would say, hot takes from Ian. Yeah, what I would say is that we in ISE have done several X++ centric projects that are based on Git repos. These are customer vetted solutions. We took the kind of amalgam of this project infrastructure and actually documented it in a couple different places in the engineering blog. Some of it's in that playbook I was mentioning. The link that is on screen goes straight to learn.microsoft.com. I worked with some of your colleagues in the actual in the ALM V team in Fast Track to get a couple of documents into Learn, so that our beloved customers understand that they're not stuck with TFVC for their ERP projects. And the reason that's important, the reason that I wanted to talk about it, we have a lot of customers, especially new customers, that maybe they've already got in-house devs. In my experience, in my team's experience, these teams usually prefer Git. They've usually got other stuff set up in Git repos already. And so when we come in with kind of our historical guidance and say you need to set up TFVC for your F&O implementation, that increasingly is getting pushback. So this is kind of the way to help people understand that you do have a path forward on that.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
And thank you for letting me do a little soapbox speech on. I'm trying to get the word out because it's still.
I mean, it's what's top of mind. So.
Yeah.
That's what we do here.
That's until the last. I don't know when I'll stop thinking about that. That's always somewhere in the top 3. Is like, people want this. They don't necessarily know they've got it. So the more we can get the word out, the better.
Can you
all I
think
about is the guidance hub.
why
putting everything in it.
might want to use Git. It sounded like one, they're already using it might be a reason, but is there any other reason that they might want to use that instead of the alternative?
Yeah. So and we allude to it a little bit in that the splash page that link goes drops you straight into. But one of the key things that I think is important, and we actually had a customer send this to us, so it's a little embarrassing in that particular interaction. TFVC is considered feature complete. So if you look at where the investment is going, not just at Microsoft, but across the community, there's a lot more kind of modern code management tooling and just general investment going into Git tools versus TFVC. Now, one thing I want to make clear is for anybody that has built a lot around their TFVC repos, it's not going away. Like, you can still do that, but from a kind of forward-looking perspective, and again, especially from a community perspective, not necessarily Microsoft, to me, the forward direction is Git. So like, there's some specific things that are in the playbook around like code analysis, secret scanning, some of these more modern repo-centric tools that are easier, or there's more options to build with Git repos versus TFVC.
Okay, that makes sense.
But like Git, like it has like chat bots now, right? Like you can ask Git questions, and it has like ways to help you automate the writing of your code in
like
Git.
The Copilot stuff.
Yeah, the Copilot stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, which you don't get that with Visual Studio directly.
No, yeah, it's the GitHub Copilot. I'm trying to think if there is any. I don't want to say there's not any TFVC copilots, but I'm not aware of any. And there actually, but you did touch on, there's an important distinction that's actually come up in customer conversations, which is that and now we're getting real into the weeds, but the host system is different than the technology. So what I mean by that is that Azure DevOps, as the host system, you could have a TFVC repo or a Git repo.
Right.
And so the things that these features are attached to, because we've built this big ether of these different kind of platforms and applications on the platforms, it's kind of confusing. But the key thing to understand is that like you can keep Azure DevOps and still set up a Git repo. And actually, that's what I would recommend for anybody that's looking into this, because we have other things that we've built that are tied to Azure DevOps around CI/CD for F&O that are currently only available in Azure DevOps. And the Copilot's an example where that's a GitHub thing. And so if you had your code, if you had your Git repo set up in GitHub, is that right? I don't want to misstate in a public venue, but it is GitHub Copilot. So I'm pretty sure it's GitHub centric.
Yeah, there's a Visual Studio extension, but I'm not seeing specific documentation about it. It looks like it might be missing. Oh, here we go. You got to click on Visual Studio. I'm gonna put the link in here. So it looks like Visual Studio uses the GitHub Copilot.
Yeah.
And that's I think relatively recent, because it
It's
first
very
came on
new.
VS Code.
I think that was announced at like Ignite, I think.
Yeah.
Inspire?
Inspire's
I've set it
happening
up
right
locally.
now.
Like
Oh, Ignite before. Okay.
it's been within like the past quarter or two. Like it's relatively.
I don't remember. It was a recent announcement though.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you use Visual Studio, you can view and incorporate suggestions from GitHub Copilot directly within the editor.
You know,
and one of the
I used that Copilot to help me write some Java. I am not a Java developer, but I needed some Java on my personal website for my woodworking like side hustle, and it was amazing, and it worked so well, and I can now put on my resume that I'm a JavaScript developer. Maybe not.
First of all, congrats. That's cool. In my experience, and you may have had a similar experience, it's the thing I appreciate about the way that it's been built is that, not to disparage, but Clippy, I think, comes up a lot in these contexts. And Clippy was maybe a little too invasive with the assistance.
Yes.
The GitHub Copilot is like the right balance of like, you pause for a second when you're trying to fix something, and then it like, 2 seconds, and then it auto completes, and you're like, oh, that's actually what, thank you. Versus like, if you're really getting into it and suddenly you have like a closing parenthesis, it can be disruptive, and it's not that way. I think they've done a really good job timing when it jumps in to help. Like it's the human pause of like, okay, I don't know what to do now, and it's, guess what? I have an idea. It's really cool.
But I also like that, like when you ask it questions, that it not just gives you the solution, it explains it to you. Like it gives you the breakdown. Like not being a JavaScript developer, I can write other types of code. So like generally I can oftentimes read and understand it, but like it explained the nuances. Like if I pasted something in and was like, why doesn't this do X, Y, and Z? Like, what do I need to change? It explains it. And I think that's so great because I'm then not only like getting my problem fixed, but I'm learning so that I can do it better next time, which I think is super cool.
Yeah.
There was a great podcast where recently, I can't remember, it was Bill Gates and I think Kevin Scott maybe, where Bill Gates talks about like that to him was one of the like killer features of all of these models is like the learning aspect. Like for people that maybe can't afford a tutor or don't have access to those resources, if they have access to one of these models, they can do that kind of interaction with the model to learn things that maybe they wouldn't have had another opportunity to do that. I think that's going to be an exciting part of.
I saw a commercial on TV very recently that was talking about how 50% of Americans actually are learning the skills that they need for their jobs outside of traditional methods, such as like going to college. And I was like, so what you're saying is it's super interesting. And I think the role that AI plays in that as we move forward is going to be interesting to see like how people can skill up, through the use of AI tools that are free or very inexpensive to use.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting is the potential application for the hyper specific skills that you get by working at specific companies. Like, if you think about all the tribal knowledge that kind of builds up in a company, like I worked at a manufacturing company when I was in college, and like there's a whole kind of data set internally, and it takes a long time for new people to come in and like learn the specific procedures you do and why you do them, and in all those different areas. And also there is like no documentation, like a lot of I don't know how to describe the companies exactly, but there are plenty of companies out there that have kind of low KB documentation. So you get that person who he's like 80 years old and they keep paying him like thousands and thousands of dollars every year to stay because he's the only one who knows how X, Y, or Z thing works. Like if you can, just find a way to take all of that like siloed data and turn it into a KB for those specific jobs, like onboarding new employees who don't necessarily have the direct experience could be a lot more quick. Which I think would be super interesting.
That train of thought that you're describing is kind of where my team, we just landed our semester goals, and that's one of the things that's driving the note. So specifically, the notion that like there's these things that we have in-house in our systems that are either undocumented or like human-centric, but like automatable. I'm not describing it very well. That's a place where like we're
automatable. Yeah. Well, like if you go into an Excel every week, I actually worked at this company. They would like use some like market statistics to then drive decision making. So like this guy would log on to a website, get the data, type it into an Excel sheet, and then like print it, right? So that's is that what you mean, like a human-centered task that's automatable?
Yeah. That's, to me, it feels like there's a lot of problems. I mean, I know the first pass on all this, I should mention as a biz apps guy, was of course Power Platform tools, the Power Automate, Azure Logic Apps. Like that was kind of the first pass on this kind of automation. But now you get to the point where you say, I have this process. Here's the relevant information. Help me like document it or come up with a way to optimize. Have I just lost my?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just like, because we've had process mining tools have existed for years, right? And from what I've understood, that the hard thing is you can't just take a process and stick it into a tool and it understands. Like, there has to be some context setting, like this action means this. Like, I think it's the same challenge you see when you look at bringing Copilot into like an ERP, is you have to be able to point to every line of code and say, this is what contextually what this code is doing, or what this column in this table means. And like where I think tech has always been behind in terms of documentation is translating technical to functional, right? Like explicitly translating that.
Yeah. I think you make such a good point. I think it's one of those things that, like, there are some people who possess that skill. And I think that's where, like, being able to translate that technical to the kind of logical, functional aspect. I think it's kind of interesting because it's almost like the whole guidance hub and all this business process guide work that we're doing. Yeah. It's kind of like that. We're trying to take the technical, like, this is the product, this is how it works, and like, because I don't want to say reverse engineer it, but basically
it's a human-centered, redundant task, automatable task to say, I have this need, tell me how the system should use it. Like, we do it in every time you do an implementation. It's, as a functional consultant, it's the same thing. Let me translate this business requirement into a system that I've configured, umpteen times. And like, imagine if AI does that for you, right? You tell me your business stuff, I'll build you kind of like a V1 ERP configuration, and then you go live in however long it takes, like way less time than a full-on, manual implementation. And then you've got this time to build the new connections, to take new business terminology and link it to new technology that we haven't explored yet to solve those business problems. Like, I think the kind of acceleration of technology solutions for business, like, that's what I really hope to see out of this.
Yeah.
And the dynamic element is really, I'm sitting here thinking, like, so to a degree, Fast Track produces a ton of good guidance. How do I put it? It's not responsive, which how could it be? It's guidance.
Right.
And when we were in the partner channel, that was always the same thing, similar goal. Like, these accelerators that, like, it's a pre-can. You've got your code, you've got a certain configuration, but it's still basically static. Like, you still have to have people involved to.
You need to have a
business.
Like a way to make it dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. The dynamic
and train it to be dynamic.
Good.
Right.
And I think that's, like, I think it's interesting. I think we hope, like, to be able to get to a point where we have some level of dynamic, like, selectability. Like, when we think about the hierarchy that we've built into the business process guide, like, it's like we start with these end-to-end processes, and then we go to, like, the areas where we kind of break that down further, and then the actual business processes, and then the patterns at level 4, where it's like, this is the specific use case or industry or the way in which you want to do it. And I think the idea or the hope or the goal is that, like, if you can go through and check mark the ones that you want, like, wouldn't it be cool if you went and check marked all the patterns that you want to implement? We already have the step-by-steps for you, like, and we know which way it needs to be configured for that pattern, that scenario, that once you mark the pattern, we just go set it up for you and tell you, here's the things that you still need to decide where there was a decision to be made, where it's like you have to pick from the drop-down box. But it's also understanding how they're all interrelated. And I think that's part of the complexity of an ERP, because, like, you make a change here and it affects all these other things. It's like we start with fundamentals. Like, even if we take something like a customer group, right? That customer group applies to so many other business processes. And you have to determine your customer groups before you can go do these other things. So it's like making those interconnections between all these things, and then, like, making it easier for somebody to see that it's almost like that entity relationship diagram, but it's not an ERD. It's like a functionality relationship diagram that, like, we're hoping to build out of this. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah. Well,
like,
that is.
You're describing a world where we don't have to do a system-wide test every time we make a little change, which would be awesome. So totally on board with that.
So that is the time we have for today.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Ian, it's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise,
Thank you
likewise,
so
yeah.
much for coming out. We'll have to have you again because I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface of what's going on in that brain of yours. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We'll catch you next week for Top of Mind.
Yeah.
Thanks.